Hi guys, thanks for coming. Good first day. I imagine that's what everybody says. And the whole mantra for our team, we've been working on this all summer, just making eye and thinking about. And Tim Kite was involved too. It was just the whole thing's going to be the edge, and the edge is where average stops and the elite begins. And the great players we've been around, individuals, those are when they become their best. Is when it gets real hard, and the average person, the average player, the average coach, that's when they kind of shut her down because it gets real hard and uncomfortable. And then that's where the elite starts to take off. So the whole message today is name a team that did not have a good first day. There's 130 teams right now that had a great first days. That's the average. That has nothing, really no bearing on anything really, other than we're just trying to install plays and all that. So there's no really evaluation other than maybe a skill set, but I'm going to watch it real closely, and that's the message to our players, that you think of the great ones we've had around here, and the cool thing is it's never too late to change. And I use examples. Steve Miller, did he graduate or not graduate?
Yes, yes.
Guys like Steve Miller, he's a graduate, he's a national champion, and he decided in his last year to go and cross that line, cross that edge, and become elite at what he did. So I'm anxious to see who's going to cross that line, even guys that haven't been here. And then a very impressive first-year group of players that went out this morning. They're I say this often. I hope they all play, but there'll certainly be some of them play because we don't have the pads on yet. So once again, average is where the edge is where average stops and elite begins. There's that fine line when that happens. And that's why it's elite, because very few players, when it gets really, really hard, very few coaches. I've had coaches that when it gets really hard, they're not very good at what they do. And then I've had other coaches that becomes elite. That's when you can cross that line, get that big-time recruit, cross that line and get your players to perform in adverse situations or when it gets real hard. So obviously I'm counting on about practice 12 is going to be that line of demarcation where I'll tell you what kind of team we'll have. When it gets tough and hard and I just kind of don't like it, and they keep turning around and look for guys like Taylor Decker and Darren Lee and Josh Perry will be average as anything. If we see some guys step up like we did in 14 and last year, then we have a chance to be special, because athleticism is not an issue. Chemistry, toughness, those kind of things I just don't know yet, because we just ran around in shorts and looked pretty good running around today. So I'll answer any questions for you.
Far right over here, Clay.
Is that about the same time you want to have the starting lineup?
You'd hope, yeah. I think that's all ties together. Practice 12-13 is when you start, because we won't go scout team for a while. I'd love to get every player an opportunity. So the first scrimmage will be Saturday, and that I think that's after a two-a-day too. So next week, not this week, the next week we should start getting some. I'll make announcements too, and we always make a big deal. Make that call to that family and say, make sure you go on the road games because your son's starting. Those are great phone calls to make.
Was there a guy today that stepped up? No.
Second row left, Ari.
Urban, we talked about months ago about the texting rule that they passed and the social media rule August 1st. All that stuff kind of happened, and your staff seemed to be prepared at least the next morning in terms of who to retweet, which prospects, and all this stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about how that has impacted your staff's philosophy on recruiting? And we see all the retweets and stuff on social media, but how much has changed with you guys with texting behind the scenes?
Oh, it doesn't impact to us. A text it's just a student athlete gets inundated, and I heard from players that it's a pain in the, because everybody's texting them. They can't control. I guess they can block numbers, but the one thing about social media, which I don't include texting into that, social media, you can decide who you want to have conversations with. So it doesn't impact us whether you text or. That's not the purpose of the rule. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's all about the student athlete. So I'd ask them. To us, it's just.
But now you're able to text them as much as you want, whereas in the past you had restrictions of how much and when.
No, there was no texting before.
Right. So now that you have that, I'm sure that there's been.
It's no difference to us than whether it's text messaging or DMing. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's still you're doing, hey, how's it going? Give me a call. That doesn't change. It's on the student athletes end. Is they get inundated now. They can't control their phone, and when they're done with it at practice, that phone. Can you imagine what that mess looks like? Their schools texting them that they don't want to hear from. And they can't just turn off that. We're in social media. I don't want to hear, they just don't follow them. So that it's not so much with us. It hasn't changed us at all.
The night before August 1st, when it all happened, did you guys have like a plan of here's how we're going to
No.
attack social media? Here are the guys that were you guys in your room the night before saying here's who we're going after, here's how we're doing it? Or was it just like it's August 1st, let's retweet everybody?
I don't know. It doesn't. I have Pantone does all that. And I have my guys I text, and I don't do retweeting because I don't want to offend anybody. So I don't know those questions.
Front row right. Austin?
Heard of them in some August and training camps where you say, everything this month is to get ready for the first game. And you have so many jobs to sort out. At what point can you do that and get ready for the opener? Or are you doing that already? How do you manage
No,
that?
it's a good question. Normally speaking, you are like last year. Let's go win the first game. Probably next week, a lot like what Clay asked. Next week we'd like to start narrowing in. We have an idea who are going to play, but there's some really good young players. So by next week, I'd love to start giving you guys when a guy earns it
Does
and
it
announce people as starters.
Does it help to have that head start at quarterback this year?
Oh yeah. It's in the center, and there's some key positions. But the quarterbacks, it's great to have them there.
Bill?
Can you elaborate on the edge and who came up with the idea and how that became such a big?
Yeah, Tim Kite. We have leadership training quite often with our staff, more than probably ever this year. We're going to carry at some point. We'll do it with our players, and I just that was very appealing. I always like to give a visual as well as a very clear picture for everybody. And we've had a bunch of great players roll through these chairs, and they had one thing in common. It wasn't height, weight, vertical jump, or 40-yard dash time. It was when it got really hard, they got really good. And JT is a great example. That second overtime, I use it all the time. But those are edge moments. And there's other guys we had that just didn't materialize. They just didn't play. And once again, it wasn't because of vertical jump and speed and whatever. It was because when it got hard, they didn't like it. And I've had teams that weren't very good. When it got hard, they didn't like it. And I've had teams that became exceptional when it got hard. And so that's when the average people kind of start to disappear.
I know it's too early to say so-and-so jumped out at you, but was there an overall impression you got of the team today at all?
Not really. I think we're a very athletic team, but it's going to be good to have everybody together tomorrow. This morning you guys were out there very slow, just teaching them how to, practice.
Second row left. Lori?
Coach, obviously when you go into a game, you have a plan, but you adjust it depending on what's going on. How much is that true of a practice? And with the team as young as you have, does that happen even more so? Or do you have a script and you just stick to it?
For the most part, stick to it, because we have to get certain things done, even if a guy gets dinged up, even if a guy's not able to go because of whatever reason, we have to stick with it. And that's the coaches more than myself, that they know they have checklists of things that everybody has to get done. So we don't adjust as much during practice.
So, you haven't had a time where a group doesn't appear to be getting something and you have to adjust from that standpoint?
Oh, we have. Yeah, sure. We all extend periods, and maybe we'll spend more time on something than the other, but that doesn't happen very often. It does. When that happens? When you first take over a program and they don't know how to practice, or I shouldn't say that, they don't practice like we expect. And I remember those are, I can give you some good Bowling Green stories, but I won't do that. Where inside drill had 15 plays scripted, and they still laugh about it now. I think we played 86 plays of inside drill because it was that bad. But we don't.
Front row right. Tim?
I hope we don't have to do that here.
Yeah, Herb, a couple things. Number one, like you're talking about the edge, the wolves thing and things like that. Do you find years like this, do they keep you as a coach fresh? You have to kind of reinvent yourself a little bit, don't you, from year to year?
We have to think like an 18-year-old, and that's a challenge I have for our staff all the time. I'm trying to appeal to the 52-year-old assistant coach. I don't really care. To the 18-year-old that has to go do his job, that has to do very uncomfortable things, we have to appeal to them. Yeah. And I think if you notice a lot of these, the chase, the grind, the visuals of the edge, the wolf, those are all, hey, it's not one of these things, hey, let's try this. It's extremely well thought out. I have my little team, David Gischel, Tim Kite, Mickey Marotti, and we kind of meet very often on this. And how do we get that human spirit? How do we solve that mystery of how to get them to go as hard as they can?
Yeah, and that's why, we were asking you in Chicago, reflecting on last season, but really last season has very little, worked and didn't work last year has very little to do with, well, it has some to do, but it has little to do with as you approach this year, right? I mean, from this.
Very little, I think, as a veteran group, so if I ever have a veteran group again,
Yeah.
I'll learn from that experience, but this is a lot like 14.
Yeah. And Drew Chrisman, is he going to Gray Shirt, or, I mean, he gets to work in the preseason camp, right? I mean, I don't understand.
No, he right now is paying his own way, and there's a chance we'll put him on. I'm still dealing with numbers issues right
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
But no, he's our backup hunter, and he looked great today.
But there was a point, because I remember he told me on signing day that he might Gray Shirt
Right.
this year. Yeah, but that is.
Well, that's the problem is the parents have to pay for school and all
Right.
that. So if they want to sit for 6 months, then he gray shirts. That's what a gray shirt is.
Right.
Front row middle, Dave.
You mentioned you're impressed with your freshman class so far. You said back on signing day you would hope 18 true freshmen would play in a perfect world.
Yeah.
Is that still kind of the goal, or?
Sure, sure it is. It won't happen, but this is the last year's group was not very mature for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons because they're not bad people. It probably was they looked in front of them and saw a monster that they couldn't beat out. And what's the human nature? I'm not going to beat that guy out, so I'm going to act like an 18-year-old. Where if all of a sudden you're getting ready in 3 weeks, I say, go, you're playing. That kind of makes people mature rather quickly. So I think it's a much more mature group because they see this is open season, man. Go beat someone out.
Now, on the offensive line, with 2 open spots, not much if they're really open, with Michael Jordan and Isaiah Prince, is there a chance that you could rotate the first couple of games, like a guy like Malcolm Pritchard could rotate in there, or do you want
Yeah, I think so.
a solid 5 from day one?
I hope we have a solid 5, but I'll go more. Probably next Wednesday would be the ideal time I can start telling you who's going to play. 'Cause Malcolm's look great. That's a big athlete now, and a great kid.
Second row middle, Ryan.
We were talking with Ray Fawn at Big Ten Media Days, and someone asked him about Michael Jordan potentially starting, and he said, hey, he's got to make it through his first camp first. When you've got true freshmen like that, how do you balance, getting them ready for college football with, not completely wearing them down with 2 days and things like that?
That's the hard part of it. It's not just freshmen. It's not true freshmen, but even redshirt guys. So that's a fine line. And keep guys healthy, but get them game. And that's the tough thing about football. All due respect, it's not shooting free throws or spiking a volleyball. I love those sports. But football, if you want to give them a game rep, there's 11 bodies going against each other full speed with one objective: knock the out of the other guy. So you have to be very, very efficient in when you're doing those things. That's more time spent on that. I think I said that earlier. More time spent on that than I've ever spent on practice schedules.
And the last couple of questions. Over here to the right, Matt.
With the kind of team you have, with the inexperience and everything, do you, kind of building off of what Tim was asking, do you feel different going into this camp? Does the start of camp feel the same for you year after year, or are you sitting there going, God, we got a lot of things we got to get done?
Oh, this one feels different.
Yeah. In what ways? I mean, what do you stand?
Oh, I don't want to screw it up. I mean, you guys know me well enough after all these years. I don't want to look back and say, damn it, why didn't I do this? Or, you put them in too many contact situations. So, but every year is different. And this, it's exciting too, because it'd be a little bit depressing if you walk in here and that we weren't very good. I think we have a chance to be pretty good.
And last questions. Doug.
Urban, it looked like before practice you welcomed back a couple of the guys who had been coming back from injury.
Yeah.
Dontre Wilson in particular, I remember when we were in Chicago, before his freshman year, we asked you a million questions about him and his potential. Now here he is as a senior and he's had some injuries. Could he still
Sure.
be that guy that
Sure.
maybe everyone thought he could be?
Oh, yeah. He's 198 pounds, and the guys you're talking about are Noah Brown, Cam Burrows, Dontre Wilson, Eric Smith. And the hardest part of our profession is when a player gets hurt. And one of the great things of the profession when they come back and join their team again. And so I just loved. I do that every year, and see the guys light up, and because they're playing the game they love again, and being around the kids they enjoy being around.
I remember you mentioned something in Chicago about when Dontre first started off, he couldn't really block, so you had to. Has he got it all now?
I think so.
He's
got to, his body's got to maintain. It's a tough sport, and his heart's always into it. It's just when you're broken foot, you can't control that. But I'm anxious. He had a good day today, but once again, it's a long journey. And the thing to keep in mind too, why two-a-days are so important, why training camp is so important. You have 29 practices to get ready for your first game, and I always count about 24 left the rest of the season. So 50% of your practices are done before the first game. And then it's just maintenance, and it's not development. It's maintenance. You always develop a couple guys, but it's not like this is all development and all figuring out. So if you look at it's kind of not equated properly. I mean, but that's the way it is, because football, you can't really have live scrimmages on a Tuesday and Wednesday getting ready to play. So you got that this 3-week period, you're going to, it's either this or this.
Coach, thank you very much.
Thank you.